Welcome to MRG's first podcast of 2011. This month we take a look at how indigenous people in Cambodia are threatened by development projects, hear about an innovative new way to tackle racism in the Dominican Republic, and travel to Uganda, where minority language issues are illustrated through song. In Cambodia, an estimated 150,000 people are facing forced eviction from their homes. Many of these are members of indigenous groups. They have traditionally occupied land now slated for resource development projects. Indigenous peoples are often pushed from their land and given little or no compensation. But they're also fighting back. Minority Voices Asia editor Jared Ferry has more.
One year ago, members of the Benong indigenous group traveled to Phnom Penh from remote villages in Mondulkiri province. They gathered in a conference hall along with members of the media and representatives from human rights groups. The Benong launched the event by singing traditional songs. They had come to raise awareness, and many community members shared their experiences and frustrations with a rubber company that was moving into their traditional territory. The rubber company was a joint venture between the French company Socfin and a Cambodian company called KCD. The Benong were being offered three choices. They could accept compensation for the land taken over by the rubber company, they could choose relocation, or they could produce rubber for the company on small family-run farms. The Benong who gathered in Phnom Penh were not satisfied with these options. They told me they were not necessarily opposed to the rubber company, as it could bring more development to their impoverished communities, but they wanted to keep enough land to maintain their traditional semi-nomadic lifestyle of cultivating small plots of land for a couple of years at a time, then moving on and letting the soil regenerate. Some had already been forced from their land, despite Cambodian laws that make provisions for collective land rights for indigenous peoples. One year later, a community representative has told me that the situation has improved somewhat, at least on paper. The company has promised to allow them to keep relatively large tracts of land for their own use. But negotiations are ongoing, and it is still unclear what land the Benong will be allowed to keep and what land the company will take. For now, the Benong are waiting to see if they will benefit from development or become victims like so many others.
In the Dominican Republic, Haitians, who represent a minority of up to 1 million people, form a distinct cultural and linguistic group. Most Dominicans perceive themselves and Dominican culture as essentially urban, Spanish-European and superior. But in contrast, Haitians and their culture are perceived as being rural, backward, African with a French veneer and inferior. MRG's Dominican partner Muda challenges both gender discrimination and racism in the Dominican Republic by empowering women, providing them with access to basic social services. MRG's street theatre programme works closely with Muda and uses performance to challenge commonly held racist attitudes and negative stereotypes about minorities and indigenous peoples. Miguel Ramirez, who is the artistic director of the street theatre project in the Dominican Republic, explains how drama is helping to break down barriers in polarized communities.
El piloto nuestro de la República Dominicana trata básicamente sobre una problemática que es muy latente en nuestro país, que es básicamente la discriminación de los dominicanos nacidos en territorio dominicano, pero que son de origen haitiano. Entonces tenemos una problemática que se remonta a problemas históricos y políticos, pero específicamente es sobre la negación de la documentación de identidad. Es decir, hay toda una complejidad, todo un problema político y social de quererles negar la identidad como dominicanos por el prejuicio y la condición de que sus padres son de origen haitiano. Básicamente ahí es el tema central del piloto, aunque en la historia cruzamos situaciones que suceden de discriminación situaciones con enfoque de género, es decir, cómo esta problemática también afecta directamente a las mujeres de discriminación, afecta a los jóvenes por a no tener documentación, no pueden tener acceso a la educación. Cómo afecta, por ejemplo, a las personas mayores que al no tener documentación legal no pueden tener acceso a los medios de trabajo. Cada medio tiene su efectividad. Y por mi experiencia ya de años en el teatro, como director de teatro, como escenógrafo, como actor en el teatro y como consultor incluso en otros tipos de proyectos comunitarios, como facilitador inclusive de talleres, como profesor en el aula que soy de teatro, uno se va dando cuenta que hay medios que llegan más directos, medios que tienen mucho más impacto en una población que, digamos, no puede tener acceso a una información clara, precisa y con un grado de interés directo hacia esa población. Soy más específico. A ese público, a ese blanco que le llevamos que va dirigido el proyecto, creemos que es una vía efectiva de impacto rápido. En el caso nuestro, que lo hacemos en la calle, en las plazas, en espacios públicos, la idea es precisamente eso, es tomar ese espacio un poco de asalto, aunque lo tenemos planificado nosotros, pero es tomarlo un poco de asalto, es tomar un poco a la gente de asalto, desprevenida, montamos toda nuestra escenografía y un poco impactarlos con una situación que a veces ellos no quieren reconocer o una gran cantidad de personas obvian que eso está sucediendo en ciertas poblaciones de minoría. Entonces, para nosotros es muy importante, a través del teatro, llevarlo a la calle, tener ese impacto con todo ese público que está fluyendo de manera imprevista y presentarles esta problemática para cuestionarlos, para provocarles estado de conciencia, para despertarlos de que esa situación está sucediendo en nuestro país, de que es un problema social, de que es un problema político, que no necesariamente deben tomar decisiones los políticos y las instancias oficiales, que todos los ciudadanos podemos tomar partido de esta situación y podemos tomar decisiones inclusive en ese sentido. Y por qué no agruparnos, asociarnos, crear mecanismos de defensa de esas grandes minorías y llevarlas inclusive a instancias oficiales para que esa problemática tenga otro tipo de resolución.
Despite being the original inhabitants of the equatorial forests of Africa's Great Lakes region, Batwa, sometimes known as pygmies, are in official terms practically invisible. They face ongoing discrimination resulting in poverty, unemployment, and poor access to education and healthcare. The few thousand Batwa in Uganda have been almost entirely dispossessed of their land by the combined pressures of government-sponsored conservation projects and farmers from majority tribes claiming their land. According to Batwa tradition, families and friends gather round a fire and sing songs of courage, perseverance and celebration. This field recording, made by MRG's Mohamed Matovo in Kisoro, southwest Uganda, illustrates how Batwa have been forced to adopt the traditional ways of the surrounding majority tribes. The language they are singing in is not their own, but belongs to Bafumbira, a majority tribe found in the same district.